Okay, we're recording. You can see my screen?
Yeah.
And action. All right. So we were talking about the Acrodonta group. Acrodont coming from tooth infused to the bone. And this group includes two families, the Agamidae and the Chameleonidae. And I am Jalen.
I'm Madeline.
All right, let's get into it. Starting off with systematics, so the Acrodonta are a subclade of iguanid squamates consisting almost entirely of old world taxa, um, including the two families I just mentioned, Chameleonidae and Agamidae. And this phylogeny over here, highlighted where they are in reference to everything else and their sister taxa. And up here we have a more spread out version of it, more species wise, but we're going to be focusing more on the Chameleonidae and Agamidae. Um, this picture over here, the acrodont, this is the type of teeth that they have, in comparison to these other two teeth, say necodont and pleurodont. You can see that the tooth is fused to the jawbone. And these ones are more, the tooth looks like it's being fused inside of the jawbone. This is basically what we have. Um, and then we have the agamidae down here, and we have a chameleonidae right here. Morphology. So these families they're pretty much both small and diurnal, which means they're out during the day. They are specialized for arboreal, which are living in trees and branches and whatnot, terrestrial, just living on land, and saxicolous habitats, which are like rocky habitats. They have a prehensile tail, which is useful for those arboreal habitats, staying in trees and gripping. Um, the chameleon has a ballistic tongue, which we've seen before, and we'll see in the next slide. And they also have laterally flattened bodies. And the chameleons also have diagnostic zygodactyl feet, um, which is this split over here. I have a cool picture of their bones here. I also have a video of how they walk here if you guys would want to watch that. Their eyes move independently, which we can see down here. And for Agamidae, they have keeled scales, which basically overlap and it makes them a bit pointy. They have mid-dorsal crest and throat flaps or fans. I also have a picture up here comparing the skulls of the Chameleonidae and Agamidae. You can see that crest for the chameleons. Also down here, I have their two teeth types, um, chameleons and Agamidae. And this fun little picture right here is the tongue of the Agamidae, just so you can see the difference, because we know what a ballistic tongue looks like. But Agamidae had these cute, just like little tongues. This is a picture of the chameleon eating. This one is really cool in terms of seeing how the tongue actually works. Here's a nasty diagram of the tongue. This is going to be helpful for one of pretty sure it's a short answer question. Oh no, it's an essay question. For an essay question that we have nice up and close. So, this is a gamma day with fun little throat flaps, and this video is hilarious. It's actually of one attacking a man, but you can kind of see those throat flaps in action. We'll also get in more into that in the behavioral section. So I threw this little ugly guy in here because I thought it was interesting just to see. So this is the pygmy chameleon of the Eastern Arc Mountains of Tanzania. And I just wanted to throw these in here so that we can see the differences between the chameleon that we know and love and these guys. Um some things I just pointed out, they have like this weird shorter tail. They also seem to have a smaller range of coloration. It's usually like anywhere from like this green to this brown, not like those fun colors that we've seen before. And they're likely on a separate evolutionary trajectory. Obviously, they're not really changing ecologically and phenotypically, so they've been like this for a bit now. Biogeography. So they could be found in tropical and subtropical regions of the Old World, including Africa, Asia, Australia, and some parts of Europe, mostly like the tropical parts of Europe. Today they're mostly found in Madagascar. In this fun picture, we kind of can see that distribution over the years, over the millions of years. And you see them starting around the Cretaceous period about, and then you see them make their way to Africa and these other parts that I had mentioned. But they're mostly, I think, the most active in the Eocene. In this picture down here, this is just the Agamidae species basically. To kind of ignore the sexual things that this paper was exactly talking about, I kind of just wanted to throw this in here so that we can see like where they're found exactly. So, these both of them are sit and wait predators. One half of the agamids are primarily insectivores, and one half omnivores or herbivores. They mostly eat insects. Um, some of the larger species of chameleon have been found with birds in their system, which is like unlikely, not usual, but it is something that was interesting. And they do use sunlight to digest their food. The warmth allows their body to do like natural processes like digestion, which is super important for living in general. And they can change the color to regulate the temperatures or to signal intentions in other chameleons, which we'll get into in the behavioral section. But I like this picture. If you guys can try finding it, it took me a couple of seconds. I don't know if it was 9, but have fun with that one. And then here's that ballistic tongue we're talking about. Maybe even like a cricket of sort. And then here's that little tongue that I was telling you guys about. Cute little tongue. Um, and then this paper, they were just talking about, they're just comparing like what kind of insects they found and that their hardness compared to, obviously they like softer insects compared to hard, which just makes it easier for them to eat and digest. So both of them are oviparous and they do lay their eggs in holes in sandy areas. So the mother will dig the hole, lay the eggs, cover the hole back with the sand, and then leave. And then I have over here that they cover their tracks, so that they can make sure no predators follow them or find their eggs and eat them. Those eggs are in the holes for about 10 months and they can lay anywhere from 14 to 47 of those eggs. There are some chameleons will actually give live birth, which I kind of have up here. So here's that egg birth, and then here's that straight just live birth. Um, and we'll kind of talk about that in a second. I'll make you guys think about that a bit, why they may do that. And then we have the only agamidae that is live bearing, and that's the toadhead agamus. And usually males have a larger body size or elaborate horns and castes, and that's just to show dominance and, for mating and such. So why might they give live birth while others may lay eggs? Um, Basically, it just depends on the environment and what's going on. If it's too cold for them to lay eggs, they'll just give live birth. And here's a video of them giving that live birth. Just kind of nasty but interesting. So if you don't want to get that a watch, go ahead. So I found this interesting paper for Agamidae sexual dimorphism. This was the Draco species of flying lizard, and basically they had found that the females usually have a larger body, larger head, larger tail, and larger wings span compared to males. And that's what you're kind of seeing over here. This top line on all three of them are the females, and I was like the hollow dots are females, and the filled in dots are males. But you can just see that they usually have a larger tail length, head length, wingspan because females have to carry their children, well, carry the eggs, and they need to be able to actually support themselves during flight. So, because they are heavier, they need to have these larger limbs so that they're able to carry themselves. And they also found that males larger and larger species and females are larger and smaller species, which is interesting.
For movement in spatial ecology, I found this interesting article about the Laborde's chameleon, which is the shortest living tetrapod, living about 4 to 5 months. And this study focused on their mating, which takes place with only a few weeks. And they wanted to see if there were sex-specific movements. So to do this took place in Western Madagascar, and chameleons were equipped with small radio transmitters, and they were tracked, observed, caught, and measured. And they found that there was sex-based movements, and that females had higher site fidelity, meaning they had a high tendency to return to like the previously occupied space, low cumulative and linear distance moved, and low dispersal ratios, while males moved larger distances and moved less predictably, having higher dispersal ratios. And you can see that in that bottom right image there. The blue is going to represent the males, and the yellow bits are going to represent the females. Continuing on with movements, these guys have a lot of cool ways to move, including flying. Not really, but they glide, which is super interesting. And so I would take a look at this video. Kind of going on with the whole gliding, I found an article that analyzed how this whole system is working. So they have a broad pandigium spanning the entire length of their body and hyoid folds that help them glide. And this pandigium is actually supported by extensions from their ribs. And they can extend this by either muscle contractions or like manually holding it out. And so this article used 3D models from an old specimen to use computational techniques to simulate gliding. They did a lot of fun physics and math, which was interesting to learn about, but they did find that they could actively control their aerodynamic forces and movements while flying by changing their wing expansion and body posture. In the top right, you can see the models they made, and they tested a lot of different body postures that have been seen, and they found that they can modulate this while they're in the air, and that they plan their glide paths prior to takeoff, which is pretty cool to see. For parasites, I found an article about an agama infested with blood feeding mites. And this was based off one specimen they found, which all these mites were concentrated in the back of this host's neck in the skin folds. And for the methods, they basically took 50 mites from this agama and dissected them. And they determined that this mite pocket, like these mite pockets that is fold behind their neck, may actually limit and contain any damage caused by the parasite. And that for the mite itself, it might provide shelter for these mites and ensure like a long-term food source. So it's interesting to see how this one adaptation could negatively affect this agama, but also simultaneously help them a bit. So that was pretty interesting. For predators, both of these families pretty much have the same predators: snakes, birds, lizards, small mammals. In the pictures on the right, it's depicting a boomslang, which is in the snake in the top right, crowned hornbill on the left, and then a mongoose on the right. All of these guys are going to be eating our acrodontas. To avoid predators, I have this guy, the Thorny Devil. He's super cool. The Thorny Devil has this interesting coloration and pattern to hide from predators. It also walks a little differently, which you'll see in the video. It walks in more of like a wavy motion to kind of mimic the movement of the leaves around it. And if it is spotted and that stuff doesn't work, it has thorns and a fatty mass on its neck that it will present to the predator as a fake head to avoid its head being eaten off, which I thought was pretty interesting. So communication mating, these guys are absolute masters of visual communication. They have a bunch of adaptations and behaviors to visually communicate within species and between species. They have flaps that extend outward, or they have changing in colors. This group has so many really cool ways they visually communicate, and I had a lot of fun doing this part. And in class, I wanted to talk about how, like, what are the costs and benefits of visually communicating and who they may be communicating to, but I'll leave that question to you guys to think about. At least until this slide, because this kind of gives partly away. So I found an article about chameleons communicating with color changes, and they change their colors during social interactions, and it can depend on their mood. So this paper aimed to analyze these color changes and see how it signals to conspecifics. And for the methods, I think they say it best, where they said, we staged a series of aggressive dyadic encounters between 10 adult males, veiled chameleons in a round-robin tournament format that matched each chameleon against every other chameleon. So in the bottom left shows the structure they were in. They basically matched these chameleons against each other in a little tournament, videoed their behaviors, and then looked at those videos later to analyze their colors. And they found that the males with the brighter heads and the faster changing colored heads were more likely to win encounters. So these colors do matter to conspecifics, especially in these mate competitions. So now that I've showed you how these colors are being used, so how are they changing color? So their color is not actually changing because of camouflage. Their initial color is the best form of camouflage, but changing their color is a reflection of their mood. So when they're mating or fighting, they'll change these colors. As you can see in the top right, there's a picture. The first is when the male is relaxed, and then on the right, when it's more yellow, that's when that male is more excited, is kind of the word they used. So they change these colors. They have these nanocrystals under their skin, and they form a lattice. And the arrangement of these nanocrystals affects how light is reflected, affecting what color we're seeing. So if they can change them to make them more condensed or less condensed to produce these different reflections of colors. These two videos here really describe it well and draw it out, so I do recommend watching that. Continuing on with communication mating, this is the fan-throated lizard, another video you should go watch. This guy extends their throat fan and bobs their head to attract their mates. The bigger, the brighter fans they have, they are more likely to get this mate. So we had initially planned to have an activity where you guys color your own throat fans and we had the class vote, but obviously that can't happen anymore. We wanted to demonstrate with this activity that, like in nature, the best fan, the brightest colors, the coolest patterns are what's likely to win you a mate. It would have been cool, I promise, but I think we got the message. Continuing on, this is the toad heterogama, and this is showing more male displays. So the first video shows male-male competition over a mate, where they're basically showing dominance through these visual displays. And then on the right is a mating display towards a female, where the male is wagging its tail, doing push-ups, stuff like that. And then there's a little bit of male-male competition at the end. So They'll slightly change their behavior depending on who they're trying to communicate to, which is super cool. And then chameleons, these videos show how environment and the availability of a mate affects your mating strategy. So the first video, the chameleon has easier access to resources and mates are more easily accessible as well. So their mating rituals are more focused on defending their mate from competitors rather than actually finding a mate. And the second video shows a species of chameleon who has less access to resources and will have less likely of a chance of running into a mate. So they have to basically seize the moment when it comes to mate. So they're more aggressive to the females compared to the first video where the males are more protective. So the message here is that your environment and your availability of mating can affect your strategy. So for populations, this article looked at two different populations of the Cape Dwarf chameleon. And there's the one on the left has a larger body, larger feet, which is meant to grip larger branches, and longer tails, which is important for stability. And on the right has smaller body, smaller feet to grip smaller branches. So this article wanted to look at the role of the structural habitat in locomotor function of these two different populations. So specimens were caught by hand and then measured. So they found that the two populations used two different perch sizes and that their performance is related to their morphology and difference between the sex and the population. So this article calls these guys two true ecomorphs, and they define ecomorphs as the independent evolution of a set of habitat specialists that are similar in ecology, morphology, and behavior. So see how one species can differ so differently in two different habitats. This video talks about the Victorian grassland earless dragon. This species was actually thought to be extinct for a while, but was pretty recently discovered again. So this guy goes into detail about the species, its history, what is being done, what needs to be done. So I recommend watching this, especially since it's one of the questions we ask you, but it's also super nice to hear about a species kind of coming back or being rediscovered, though it is also important on that happy note that they are still endangered. There's a risk that they will actually be gone. On the flip side of conservation, the video on the left talks about the Peter's rockagama, which is an invasive species in Florida. This species I've actually interacted with when I was in Miami for a while. These guys are running everywhere, and at the time I didn't know anything about them. But now knowing this, they are invasive. The picture on the right is actually a picture I took while in Miami. And like the video will tell you, they reproduce very frequently. They eat native species, which is ruining the environment, and they are a nuisance to humans. So these guys are running rampant and causing a lot of environmental harm. So it's important to reduce this population. Story you'll only see on. These are our short answers, essay, and these are our references. Anywhere in the slideshow where you see a blue in-text citation, that is a direct link to the paper. That is there to help you out to easily access the paper. And I know this is not the most ideal form of presenting, so if you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to message us or come talk to us at all.